The scream of tortured metal tore through Sergeant Kalen's Voxcaster, a final ragged breath before static consumed it. Ahead, the last line of plasma guns sputtered, overwhelmed. He didn't need the Vox to know what followed. The guttural roar of the Orc charge, a green tide surging over the collapsed hab blocks, was an all-too-familiar requiem on the dying world of Viridian Thy Fourth. Each thudding step of their crudely armored boots vibrated through the cracked ferrocrete beneath Kalen's worn combat boots. His breath hitched, not from fear, but from the acrid taste of dust and despair that coated his tongue. The order had been simple. Hold the line. Protect the orbital bombardment coordinates for the Sword of Sol, then extract. But the Orcs hadn't read the script. They had come in numbers that dwarfed the PDF garrisons, swarming from their ramshackle transports like a plague of locusts. Now, only Kalen's squad, the last remnants of the 13th Viridian Rifles, remained between the monstrous Xenos and the designated beacon. He adjusted his grip on his heavy bolter, its adamantium casing hot against his calloused hands. The weapon felt impossibly light, yet also a monumental burden. Fall back to Sector Delta 7. Double time! Kalen's voice, rough but steady, cut through the din. Private Jorik, a fresh-faced youth barely out of training, stumbled, his lasgun shaking. His eyes, wide with terror, found Kalen's. "Sergeant, there's nowhere left!" Kalen ignored the boy's plea, scanning the ruins. The air shimmered with heat from distant explosions, painting the perpetually twilight sky in hues of angry orange and sickly green. "There's always somewhere, Private. We hold until the bombardment, or we die trying. Pick one." His gaze was hard, unforgiving, a necessary mask in these final moments. He needed Jorik to move, not to crumble. Jorik swallowed hard, nodding, finding a sliver of resolve. He knew Kalen was right. Death was a certainty. The only variable was how much damage they inflicted before it claimed them. Around them, the remaining 5 troopers, their faces grimed with ash and sweat, followed Kalen's lead, their movements economical, desperate. They were a broken spear, but still sharp. An Orc knob, a hulking brute with a power claw the size of a man's torso, burst through a crumbling wall of ceramite, bellowing a challenge. It moved with a surprising speed for its bulk, its single bloodshot eye fixed on Kalen. The sergeant didn't hesitate. He unleashed a short burst from his bolter, the explosive rounds tearing into the knob's crude armor, spraying green blood and chunks of bone. The creature roared, wounded, but still charging. "Grenade!" Kalen yelled, and a trooper, Fry, lobbed a frag grenade with practiced ease. It detonated at the Orc's feet, throwing the beast backward in a shower of shrapnel. It lay twitching but not dead. These creatures were notoriously hard to kill. Kalen knew they wouldn't stop until every last one of them was a mangled ruin. They reached the designated fallback point, a half-collapsed bunker built into the bedrock. It was a meager sanctuary, but it offered a momentary reprieve from the swirling chaos outside. Kalen barked orders, assigning firing lanes, checking their remaining ammunition. "Jorik, cover the west flank."
"Frey, east!"
"Ensure the beacon is secure." His internal chronometer pulsed red. T-3 minutes until orbital cleansing. 3 minutes to hold back a relentless tide. 3 minutes to pray the Sword of Sol was true to its word. "Contact!" Frey screamed, his voice raw. A new surge of Orcs, more numerous than before, emerged from the smoky ruins. They carried rusty choppers and crude shooters, their battle cries an insane symphony of violence. They were coming, not just from one direction, but from 3 surrounding their position. Kalen saw the hopelessness reflected in his troopers' eyes, but also a flicker of grim determination. They would not break. He sighted down his heavy bolter, squeezing the trigger. The weapon thrummed, spitting death, tearing through the green horde. Each kill was replaced by 3 more. The bunker was a sieve, leaking hope. Kalen knew this was it. This was where the line ended. Just as the first Orc reached the bunker's entrance, its crude axe raised high, a blinding green light erupted overhead. It wasn't the Sword of Sol's purging fire. It was something else, something alien, A shimmering emerald portal tore open in the sky above the planet's scarred surface, pulsing with an unnatural energy that made the very air crackle. The orcs, for a moment, paused their charge. Even their simple, warlike minds seemed to register the anomaly. A colossal shape, vaguely humanoid, began to coalesce within the swirling green energy, growing larger and clearer with every passing second. Kalen squinted, his mind struggling to process the impossible sight. It was a man, but not a man. It was a beast of impossible muscle, green-skinned, broader than any Oghren, with a primeval rage etched onto its massive features. It plummeted from the portal, a meteor of pure, unadulterated fury, trailing green light. It crashed into the orc horde with the force of a tectonic shift. The ground trembled, sending dust and debris raining down on Kalen and his squad. The impact cratered the earth, obliterating dozens of orcs in a single, devastating blow. A roar, not of a beast, but of a primordial force, ripped through the air, shaking the very foundations of the bunker. It was a sound of pure, unbridled fury, more terrifying than any orc war. Kalen stared, his heavy bolter momentarily forgotten. His mind, trained for war, struggled to categorize this impossible variable. It was green, monstrous, and had just annihilated part of the orc charge. But was it friend or foe? The orbital bombardment alarm blared, piercing the unnatural silence that had fallen over the battlefield. T-5 seconds. The Sword of Soul was initiating its final, cleansing strike. Kalen had to make a choice, and fast. The green giant, whatever it was still in the kill zone. The ground shook again, not from the Sword of Soul's impending wrath, but from the impossible creature that now stood amidst the pulverized remains of the orc horde. Kalen, his mind reeling, had just enough time to scream, "Brace for impact!" before the world exploded around them. The orbital lance strike from the Sword of Soul vaporized the sector, turning ferrocrete and flesh alike into incandescent plasma. The bunker, designed to withstand kinetic impacts, was instantly atomized. When the world stopped reeling, Kalen found himself disoriented, deafened by the concussion, his armor searing hot. He was alive somehow, shielded by a miraculous collapse of reinforced plasteel that had cocooned him in a pocket of relative safety. But the bunker was gone. His squad was gone. The world was a smoking, glassy crater. He pushed himself up, every muscle protesting, his head ringing. The air was thick with the smell of ozone, burnt earth, and something else. Something metallic and utterly alien. He stumbled forward, his heavy bolter lost in the ruins, drawing his combat knife from its sheath. His eyes, still adjusting, scanned the desolate landscape. The orbital strike had done its job with horrifying efficiency. There was nothing left but slag and ash. Nothing except a massive silhouette emerged from the swirling dust and steam at the epicenter of the blast. The green giant. It stood amidst the smoldering ruins, not just alive, but seemingly unscathed. Its muscles rippled, glowing faintly, as if it had absorbed the very energy of the orbital strike. It turned its head, its furious green eyes scanning the devastation. Kalen felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ash-choked air. This was not a Xenos known to the Imperium. This was something else, something truly impossible. Unbelievable, Kalen muttered, his voice raspy, a whisper in the silent, blasted landscape. He felt an emotion he hadn't experienced since his earliest days in the PDF, awe. It was quickly followed by a cold, pragmatic assessment. This being had just survived a full orbital lance strike. It was a weapon of mass destruction in humanoid form. The creature let out a low growl, a rumble that vibrated through Kalen's very bones. It clenched its massive fists, its knuckles white against its green skin. Kalen noticed the sheer destructive energy radiating from it, an aura of raw power that warped the air. It was a force of nature, untamed and utterly alien. Then its gaze fell upon Kalen. Those emerald eyes filled with a primal rage fixed on him. Kalen felt like an insect beneath a boot. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but his legs felt cemented to the ground. He stood, his combat knife a pathetic gesture against such power, waiting. The creature's attention seemed to shift slightly. It tilted its head, as if listening to something far beyond Kaelin's comprehension. Then, its eyes widened fractionally. A flicker of something beyond rage, perhaps confusion, or a fleeting spark of recognition. It raised a hand, its gargantuan fingers flexing. Kaelin braced for an attack, for the end. Instead, a voice, deep and guttural, like boulders grinding together, echoed in Kaelin's mind. It wasn't spoken aloud, but it was there, a telepathic impression, raw and desperate. Lost. Where? Kaelin flinched. Telepathy. This creature wasn't just a brute, it possessed an unknown mental capacity. He gripped his knife tighter, trying to compose himself. What are you? He managed, his own voice sounding impossibly small. The green giant merely grunted, its face contorting in an expression of frustration. It pounded a fist against its chest, a sound like a thunderclap, and the ground around them cracked further. Kaelin realized it wasn't threatening him directly, not yet. It was something else, a being of immense power, utterly displaced, utterly disoriented. Suddenly, a new sound ripped through the air, a shrill, chittering shriek that sent shivers down Kaelin's spine. Not orcs, this was a different kind of terror. From the scorched earth amidst the slag and ash burst forward a new nightmare. Fast, multi-limbed creatures with chitinous armor and razor-sharp claws, their scything limbs catching the faint light. Genestealers. They had been hiding beneath the surface, burrowing deep, perhaps drawn by the chaos or simply waiting for their moment. The orbital strike had disturbed their nest, and now they swarmed, dozens of them, their hunger evident in their clicking mandibles and glistening fangs. They paid no mind to Kaelin, their focus immediately on the largest, most potent biological signature, the green giant. Kaelin didn't hesitate. This was a known enemy, a terrifying, insidious threat to the Imperium. He didn't know what the green creature was, but he knew what the Genestealers were. Without his heavy bolter, he was useless against such numbers. He had to warn the beast, or at least give it a chance. Incoming! Xenomorphs, he yelled, pointing frantically at the swarming creatures. The green giant, still trying to process its predicament, seemed to register Kaelin's alarm. Its eyes narrowed, its focus sharpening. The rage, momentarily dulled by confusion, flared anew. This time, it wasn't undirected. The first Genestealer leapt, a blur of purple chitin and bone-white claws, aiming for the creature's chest. The giant reacted with impossible speed, a blur of green muscle. It caught the creature mid-air, its hand closing around its torso with sickening force. There was a wet crunch, and the Genestealer was squeezed into a pulp, its limbs flailing uselessly before going still. It dropped to the ground, a grotesque, broken mess. The other Genestealers hesitated for a split second, their alien minds processing the sheer, brutal efficiency of the kill, but hunger and instinct quickly overcame caution. They surged forward as one, a living tide of blades and fangs surrounding the green giant. Kaelin watched, his breath caught in his throat. He had seen Space Marines fight these monsters, seen entire squads overwhelmed. But this was different. The green giant moved like a storm, a whirlwind of fists and raw power. Every blow was a death sentence. Genestealers, creatures that could tear through ceramite and rend power armor, were swatted aside like flies. Their claws, sharp enough to cleave through flesh and bone, merely scraped against the giant's skin, leaving only shallow, quickly healing abrasions. One Genestealer managed to leap onto its back, its mandibles snapping at the giant's neck. The creature roared, a sound of pure, volcanic fury, and twisted its body, slamming the Genestealer against a jagged piece of rubble. The alien exploded into a shower of chitin and ichor. Kaelin, momentarily forgotten by the swarming Xenos, retrieved a discarded laser gun from the wreckage. Its power cell cracked, but still functional. He knew he was no match for them, but he couldn't just stand there. He aimed, his hands shaking slightly, and began to fire, picking off stray Genestealers that strayed too close, trying to draw their attention. The green giant, amidst the carnage, seemed to sense Kaelin's meager support. It turned its head, its furious eyes meeting Kaelin's for a fleeting moment. A strange understanding passed between them. It was still lost, still enraged, but now it had a clear target for its fury: the Genestealers. A massive Genestealer patriarch, its form swollen and grotesque, its intellect far surpassing its brethren, emerged from a deeper tunnel. Its forearms flexed, its headplate ridges pulsing with malevolent psychic energy. It let out a command shriek, and the remaining Genestealers focused their attack with renewed vigor, targeting the green giant's legs, trying to bring it down. The giant merely laughed, a harsh, grating sound that seemed to mock the alien's efforts. It grabbed two Genestealers, one in each hand, and slammed their heads together, crushing them instantly. Then it turned its furious gaze on the patriarch. Its roar became a challenge, a declaration of unstoppable might. The patriarch, for all its alien cunning, seemed to register the overwhelming power of its opponent. A flicker of something akin to fear crossed its multifaceted eyes. But it was a creature of the tyrannid hive mind, an instrument of absolute consumption. It would not retreat. "Sergeant Kaelin," a new voice crackled, distorted through Kaelin's vox bead. "This is Lieutenant Valerius of the Sword of Sol. We detected an anomalous energy signature immediately after the orbital strike. Are you receiving this? Identify yourself." Kaelin almost dropped the laser gun. "Valerius, he was alive! Lieutenant Valerius!" "This is Sergeant Kaelin, 13th Viridian Rifles. I'm the sole survivor of my unit." He paused, glancing at the impossible battle unfolding before him. "And I'm afraid I have a situation report you won't believe." Before Valerius could respond, the green giant launched itself at the patriarch with a primal scream. It was a blur of emerald fury, tackling the massive Genestealer and driving it through the scorched earth, leaving a trench in its wake. The battle for Viridian 4, Kaelin realized, was far from over. It had only just begun. The battle raged, a localized storm of impossible violence. Kaelin, low on ammunition, huddled behind a collapsed support beam, watching the green giant tear through the Genestealers. Each swing of its monstrous arms, each stomp of its feet, generated shockwaves that rattled the very ground. The patriarch, formidable as it was being systematically dismantled. Its chitinous armor cracked and splintered under the sheer force of the green giant's blows. Claws were ripped off, limbs were twisted into grotesque angles, and its psychic shrieks, once full of authority, now became screams of pain and desperation. The raw power on display was unlike anything Kaelin had ever witnessed. Not even the legendary feats of space marines whispered in tales of glory seemed to match this. This being was a living weapon, an engine of destruction, fueled by pure, unadulterated rage, and for some incomprehensible reason, it was fighting alongside him, or at the very least, fighting the same enemy. "Sergeant Kaelin, repeat your last transmission. Anomalous energy signature? What is happening down there?" Valerius's voice was sharper now, laced with urgency. "Lieutenant, the orbital strike, it didn't kill everything," Kaelin reported, his eyes glued to the giant. "There's a massive, green-skinned humanoid. It fell from a warp rift or something, just before the bombardment. It survived the strike, Lieutenant, unscathed, and it's currently destroying a Genestealer infestation that survived the initial cleansing." Silence met his words, a long, pregnant pause from the Sword of Sol. Kaelin could practically hear Valerius's mind struggling to reconcile the impossible. A green humanoid survived an orbital lance. Valerius finally managed, his voice strained. "Sergeant, are you certain you weren't exposed to residual psychoactivity? Hallucinations are common in such conditions." "I assure you, Lieutenant, this is no hallucination," Kaelin retorted, a hint of steel in his voice. "This thing is tearing apart a patriarch right now. It's bigger than an Ogren, impossibly strong, and appears to be in a state of extreme rage. It also demonstrated some form of telepathic communication." Another silence, longer this time. Kaelin saw the green giant finally deliver a killing blow to the patriarch, smashing its head into the ground with a sickening crunch. The last of the Genestealers, disoriented and leaderless, were swiftly annihilated. The silence that followed was broken only by the giant's heavy, ragged breathing and the distant, mournful wail of the planet's atmospheric winds. The green giant stood amidst the gore and ruined chitin, its chest heaving. Its rage for the moment seemed spent, replaced by a lingering frustration, a deep-seated anger that seemed to emanate from its very being. It turned its head, its furious eyes sweeping over the landscape, then back to Kalen. Where am I? The telepathic impression was stronger this time, laced with a raw impatience. Where is home? Kalen stood up slowly, warily. He lowered the useless laser gun. You're on Viridian 4, he said, speaking aloud, hoping the sound of his voice might soothe the creature. A world of the Imperium of Man, a long way from wherever you came from. The giant snarled, a low, rumbling sound. It seemed to understand his words. Even without the telepathy, its eyes scanned the blasted world, the ruined city stretching to the horizon. Its expression was one of profound, angry despair. Sergeant Kalen, Valerius's voice cut in. We are deploying a recon team to your coordinates. Maintain distance from the anomaly. Do not engage. Repeat, do not engage. We will assess the situation. Is the entity still hostile? Kalen looked at the giant. It stood motionless, staring at the ruined world. Its massive shoulders slumped slightly. Hostile? It had just saved his life, inadvertently, but its power, it was terrifying. Lieutenant, it's not actively hostile towards me, Kalen reported, but it's unpredictable and immensely powerful. Its presence here is an extreme threat, but it also just eradicated a significant genestealer nest that our orbital strike missed. He felt a tremor in the ground. Not the giant this time, but the approach of something else. He saw the flicker of spotlights in the distance, descending through the ash-laden sky. The Sword of Soul was sending in a team. The green giant too sensed the incoming ships. Its head snapped up, its eyes narrowing. Its lips pulled back in a silent snarl, revealing teeth like gravestones. The rage, momentarily banked, began to stir again. It was being hunted. It was being approached by more unknowns. No more. The thought voice exploded in Kalen's mind, laced with an intensity that made his head ache. Leave me alone! Kalen knew with a chilling certainty that this was going to go very badly. He looked at the descending dropships, then at the giant, then back at the dropships. He was caught between an unknown, impossible threat and the rigid, unyielding protocol of the Imperium. And the giant, displaced and furious, was ready to fight. Lieutenant Valerius, Kalen voxed, a desperate urgency in his voice. Hold your position. Do not approach. I repeat, do not. Too late. The lead dropship, a standard Aquila lander bristling with auto-cannons, breached the atmospheric haze, its searchlights spearing the desolate landscape. It was heading directly for Kalen and the green giant. The giant roared, a sound that ripped through the very fabric of reality. It turned its enraged gaze upwards, its muscles tensing. It saw the ship as a new threat, a new enemy. Kalen knew what was about to happen. Lieutenant, pull back. It's going to engage. Kalen screamed into the Vox, but his words were drowned out by the thrum of the dropship's engines. Now directly overhead, the Aquila lander, oblivious to the warning, began its slow descent, its internal auspexes trying to get a clear lock on the unknown entity. From its ventral hatch, heavily armored figures began to deploy, rappelling down ropes, their weapons already raised. Tempestus Scion's Imperial Guard elite. They were trained for any threat, but they weren't trained for this. The green giant let out another deafening roar, a sound of absolute, unbridled fury. It launched itself upwards, a monstrous leap that defied gravity. It sailed through the air, directly towards the dropship, its massive fist already clenched. Kalen watched in horrified fascination. He knew, with dreadful certainty, that the battle was about to escalate beyond anything Viridian 4 had ever seen. The Imperium had just provoked a creature of apocalyptic power, and they had no idea what they were up against. The Aquila lander's autocannons opened fire, spitting streams of tracer rounds, but they were futile. The green giant, a living meteor of rage, slammed into the dropship's hull with a deafening, sickening crunch. The metal groaned, twisted, and buckled. One of the scions, still repelling, was severed mid-air by the impact. The dropship lurched violently, its engines sputtering, its pilot screaming over the Vox. The giant clung to its side, its fists hammering at the armored hull, ripping through ceramite and plasteel like wet paper. It was tearing the ship apart, piece by agonizing piece. "Lieutenant, the dropship is compromised. It's destroying it," Kalen yelled, his voice raw with disbelief and terror. "Fall back! Fall back! All units disengage! Maintain distance!" Valerius's voice was frantic, laced with a dawning horror. But it was too late. The dropship, mortally wounded, began to tumble from the sky, a plume of smoke and sparks trailing behind it. The green giant ripped free a section of the hull, then leapt clear, landing with a ground-shaking thud amidst the ruins. The Aquila lander crashed a few hundred meters away, exploding in a fireball that momentarily illuminated the grim, ash-choked landscape. Kalen stared, numb. The elite science gone, the dropship reduced to scrap, and the creature, now fully enraged, was scanning the horizon, searching for more. It saw the faint outlines of more Aquila landers, circling cautiously in the distance, their weapon systems doubtless locked on. "They will not leave me alone." The telepathic roar in Kalen's mind was a symphony of destructive power. "Hulk smash!" The green giant let out a triumphant, earth-shaking bellow, a declaration of war against an entire planetary defense force. It began to stride, purpose-driven, towards the distant landing zones, its every step a tremor in the ground, its every breath a visible plume of angry mist. Kalen knew he had two choices: stay and witness the inevitable slaughter, or try to escape and report on the impossibility he had just witnessed. He was a single man against a force that had just humbled a full orbital strike and obliterated an elite Imperial dropship. He had to choose, and choose fast. The rumble of the approaching ships grew louder, and the green giant's stride quickened. The fight had only just begun. The ground trembled anew, a percussion section of the apocalypse, as the green giant's strides quickened. Kalen's choice, stark and undeniable, slammed into him with the force of a concussion blast. Staying meant certain death, either from the titan of muscle or the wrath of the Imperium trying to contain it. He was a sergeant, a survivor, and his duty now was to bear witness, to report. This wasn't just an impossible Xenos. It was a phenomenon that would shake the foundations of Imperial dogma. He turned, not to run blindly, but to find cover, to move with purpose. The air was still thick with ash and ozone, visibility limited to a few hundred meters. This was a tactical advantage, however fleeting. He ducked behind a jagged piece of ferrocrete, peering around its edge. The green behemoth was already a shadow receding into the gloom, a silhouette of destruction moving with terrifying speed towards the faint lights of the remaining Aquila landers. "Lieutenant Valerius, Kalen here. I am disengaging, maintaining observation from a safe distance. The entity is proceeding towards the expected landing zones. It appears to perceive all incoming forces as hostile." Kalen's voice, though outwardly calm, held a tremor of the adrenaline still coursing through him. He was reporting on an act of war, a skirmish between the Imperium and a single unstoppable force. Understood, Kalen. "Maintain comms. What is its current bearing?" "We are attempting to recalibrate target solutions, but its energy signature is unprecedented. Our weapon systems are struggling to lock on." Valerius sounded deeply shaken, the professional veneer cracking under the weight of the impossible. "Bearing is roughly 270. Straight for the projected staging area, Lieutenant. It's moving incredibly fast. Standard kinetic weapons appear ineffective." It shrugged off an orbital lance strike. Kalen emphasized the last part, hoping Valerius would truly grasp the scale of the threat. As if to underscore his words, the distant sky lit up with flashes of energy, followed by the deep thrum of heavy weaponry. The remaining Aquila landers, now wary, were engaging at range. Kalen saw streaks of red and blue light, plasma bolts and las cannon shots streaking towards the green giant. They were like angry gnats against a storm. The giant roared, a sound that carried even over the roar of weapons fire, a sound of pure defiance. It didn't slow, didn't flinch. It simply moved, an unstoppable green blur through the ruins. The plasma bolts seemed to dissipate against its skin, the last cannon fire merely scoring shallow marks that glowed for a moment before fading. It was a shield and a weapon, all in one impossible package. Kalen began to move, navigating the shattered landscape. His heavy bolter was gone, his squad was gone, but his training remained. He was a soldier, and he would gather intelligence. He needed to find a vantage point, somewhere he could observe without being caught in the crossfire of what was rapidly becoming a massacre. He picked his way through the debris, the ruins of what had once been a bustling hab block, twisted girders, shattered plasteel, pulverized ferrocrete. The orbital strike had rendered the landscape alien and hostile. The air itself seemed to crackle with latent energy, a side effect of the giant's passage and the constant weapon fire. The distant battle intensified. More Aquila landers appeared, joined by heavier Valkyrie assault carriers, their multi-lasers and Hellstrike missiles unleashing a furious barrage. The sky was alight with explosions, the ground shuddering constantly. But through it all, the green giant continued its relentless advance, a living monument to rage. He saw it swat a Hellstrike missile out of the air, not deflecting it, but catching it and flinging it back at its source, the missile exploding harmlessly far from the giant. It ripped a piece of a ruined building from the ground, a slab of ferrocrete and rebar, and hurled it with impossible force, sending it arcing through the air like a javelin. The improvised projectile slammed into an Aquila lander's engine nacelle, causing it to spew smoke and veer wildly. This wasn't a fight. It was an execution. The Imperium, with all its might and advanced weaponry, was struggling against a single, enraged being. Kalen felt a cold knot of dread tighten in his stomach. What would the Inquisition say? What would the Lord Inquisitor of Sector Gondwana do when he heard of this? A creature that could survive an orbital lance and then devastate Imperial forces with its bare hands. It was anathema, a violation of all known reality. He found a relatively intact building, its upper floors offering a precarious but elevated view. It was a risk, as the structure could collapse at any moment, but the intelligence he could gather here was vital. He scaled the rubble-strewn stairwell, his muscles aching, his lungs burning from the ash-filled air. From his perch, Kalen had a panoramic view of the unfolding chaos. The initial landing zone, a wide plaza before the main administratum spire, was now a scene of utter destruction. The Valkyries and Aquilus, once dominant in the skies, were now scattered and in disarray, some already crashing, others attempting desperate evasive maneuvers. The Green Giant, bathed in the intermittent light of explosions, was in its element. It leapt from ruin to ruin, covering vast distances in single bounds. It caught a low-flying Valkyrie, its massive hands tearing into the wing root, ripping it clean off. The gunship spiraled to the ground, its crew screaming their last. The giant then used the detached wing as a bludgeon, slamming it into an Aquila lander attempting a strafing run. The smaller ship buckled like paper, its hull breached, its engines silenced. They won't stop. The telepathic roar echoed in Kalen's mind, a raw, tormented bellow. They won't leave Hulk alone! Kalen understood. This wasn't just rage. It was a desperate, primal cry for peace, for solitude. The creature didn't want to fight. It just wanted to be left alone, to find its way home. But the Imperium, by its very nature, could not allow an unknown, impossibly powerful entity to exist unchecked. It was a threat, and threats were to be neutralized. Lieutenant Valerius, report. What is your casualty assessment? Kalen voxed, his voice filled with urgency. Kalen, it's catastrophic. Valerius's voice was grim. 3 Aquilas down, 2 Valkyries disabled. We've lost contact with over 30 scions and support personnel. Our attempts to disable it with heavy weaponry are proving futile. Plasma, multi-lasers, even Hellstrike missiles, they have no effect. It's absorbing or shrugging off everything we throw at it. A strained pause. What in the Emperor's name is this thing? I don't know, Lieutenant, but it's beyond anything in the Xenos Index. It communicated telepathically again. It's distressed, Lieutenant. It wants to be left alone. It wants to go home. Kalen felt a strange empathy for the creature. Displaced, hunted, reacting with overwhelming force. Home. Kalen, this is not a pet we can simply send away. Its very existence is an affront to Imperial stability. We must contain it, or if containment fails, obliterate it. Valerius's voice hardened, returning to the grim resolve of an Imperial officer facing an impossible foe. I'm rerouting all available ground forces, the remaining PDF units, combat engineers, even elements of the planetary governor's personal guard. We will establish a perimeter. This thing will not leave Viridian 4. Kalen watched in dismay as more vehicles, APCs, and even a few Lehman Russ battle tanks, their tracks rumbling, began to converge on the battle zone from the distant military compounds. It was a doomed effort. They were sending conventional forces against a force of nature. The green giant, its back momentarily turned to Kalen, continued its rampage. It grabbed a Lehman Russ by its battle cannon, twisting the massive weapon into a crumpled mess of steel. It then flipped the tank onto its side, sending it skidding into another vehicle before tearing open the hatch and dragging out the terrified crew, throwing them aside like dolls. The Imperium was throwing bodies and metal at a problem that defied physical solutions. They don't understand. The telepathic cry ripped through Kalen's mind, a surge of pure agony and frustration. Hulk just wants to be left alone. Kalen felt a sudden, inexplicable urge to intervene, to try and bridge the gap between this creature and the Imperium. But he was one man, armed with only a combat knife and a broken voxcaster. What could he possibly do? Then, another thought impression, faint at first, then growing stronger, sharper. It wasn't from the giant. It was different, colder, more precise, an interesting anomaly. Such raw power untamed, a shame it will be wasted. Kalen gasped, stumbling back from the edge of the building. He wasn't alone. Someone else was here. Someone else was watching. Someone else was thinking in his mind. Lieutenant Valerius, there's another anomaly. A psychic presence. It's not the green entity. It's subtle, but powerful. It just broadcasted into my mind. Kalen scrambled for cover, his heart pounding. The situation had just become exponentially more complicated. Another psychic anomaly? Kalen, what are you talking about? Our augurs detect nothing of the sort. Are you sure you're not suffering from battle fatigue? Valerius's voice was sharp with disbelief. I'm certain, Lieutenant. It was a different signature, calculating, cold. It commented on the green entity's power. Kalen scanned the ruins, a new kind of dread settling in. Who was this new player? A rogue psyker? Something far worse? Just then, a shimmer in the air, a distortion of reality, appeared on a nearby rooftop. No more than 100 meters from Kalen's position, it coalesced into a figure, tall and impossibly slender, clad in armor of obsidian black, gleaming with iridescent highlights that shifted with the light. Its helmet, sleek and avian, concealed its face, but Kalen could feel the cold, assessing gaze behind the visors. In its hand, it held a slender, impossibly sharp blade that hummed with latent energy. A Xenos. But not Orc, not Genestealer. This was something else entirely. Something elegant, ancient, and utterly terrifying. A shiver ran down Kalen's spine. He recognized the iconography from long-forgotten Imperial primers on Xenos threats. This was an Eldari, a race of arrogant, ancient Xenos who saw humanity as little more than gnats. The Eldari did not immediately react to Kalen. Its full attention was fixed on the battle below, its posture one of detached observation, like a predator watching its prey. It raised a hand, its long, delicate fingers moving in an intricate pattern. The green giant, amidst its furious rampage, suddenly staggered. A visible ripple of energy, dark and malevolent, emanated from the Eldari and struck the giant's chest. The monster roared, not in rage, but in agony, clutching its chest. Its movements became momentarily sluggish, its focus broken. What was that? The giant's telepathic cry was one of confusion, fear even. The Eldari was attacking it, and Kalen, caught between the two impossible forces, was witnessing the opening gambit of a larger, unseen conflict. Lieutenant Valerius. New contact, Eldari, black armor, on the rooftop of the Administratum Spire, northwest of my position. It just attacked the green entity with some kind of psychic weapon. It's a psyker. Kalen screamed into the voxcaster, his voice raw with disbelief. Eldari? On Viridian 4? Impossible. Our augurs show no warp signatures, no Xenos presence beyond the Orcs, and the initial Genestealer outbreak. Valerius's voice was tight with rising panic. "Kalen, are you certain? Can you get visual confirmation?" "Affirmative, Lieutenant. Its armor is black, iridescent. It's tall, slender. It just used some kind of psychic attack on the green entity. The entity is reeling." Kalen risked another glance. The giant was still clutching its chest, its rage momentarily supplanted by pain and confusion. The Imperium's forces, seeing their opportunity, redoubled their attack, their weapons hammering at the now staggering giant. The Aeldari, meanwhile, remained utterly calm, its head cocked slightly, as if listening. It raised its hand again, preparing another psychic assault. Kalen knew he had to do something. The Aeldari was too close, too dangerous. It was a known enemy, and its presence here meant only trouble. Kalen, disengage from observation. Fall back to primary extraction zone Gamma 9. "We will pick you up." This situation has escalated beyond all parameters. Valerius's voice was filled with a desperate urgency. "Negative, Lieutenant. I have visual on the Aeldari. It's preparing another attack. If it weakens the green entity further, the Imperium will destroy it. We don't know what this Aeldari wants, but it cannot be good." Kalen knew he sounded insane. Protecting an unknown, terrifying entity from a known, terrifying Xenos, while being hunted by his own forces. But his gut told him this was crucial. The Aeldari were never benign. The Aeldari figure shifted its stance slightly. Kalen realized it had sensed his observation, perhaps even his thoughts. It turned its head, and Kalen felt a cold probe, an invasive mental touch, brush against his mind. It was a sensation of utter contempt, of ancient power observing an ant. Insignificant Mon Kei. You play a dangerous game observing your betters. The thought voice was utterly devoid of emotion, a cold, sharp blade. Kalen flinched, reeling from the mental assault. This was no ordinary psyker. This was something far more potent. He knew, with sudden, chilling clarity, that he was utterly outmatched. But he had to warn the Imperium. "Lieutenant, the Aeldari just telepathically attacked me. It knows I'm here. It's hostile." Before Valerius could respond, the Aeldari raised its blade. The weapon hummed, a low, resonant thrumming that vibrated through Kalen's teeth. It was an Eldar power sword, a weapon that could cleave through ceramite as if it were air, but it wasn't preparing to attack Kalen. It was pointing it towards the green giant. Then, a sudden blinding flash. Not from the Aeldari, but from the ruined spire itself. The very structure Kalen was perched on began to groan, to crack, its integrity giving way. The Aeldari had used some unknown psychic power to destabilize the building, not to kill Kalen directly, but to force him out of his vantage point. "Emperor's mercy," Kalen yelled as the floor beneath him buckled. He scrambled for purchase, the building listing dangerously. Dust and debris rained down. He could hear the grinding protest of tortured metal, the splitting of ancient plasteel. The Aeldari was gone, vanished as swiftly as it had appeared, leaving Kalen to deal with the collapsing ruin. He tumbled down a makeshift slide of twisted rebar and shattered plasteel, landing hard on the ground floor amidst a cloud of dust and choking fumes. His body screamed in protest, his head ringing. He pushed himself up, spitting blood and dust. The world swam for a moment, but his resolve held. He had to keep moving. The battle outside raged, the sounds of distant explosions and weapon fire providing a constant, brutal backdrop. The green giant, recovering from the Aeldari's attack, roared its defiance, its fury reignited. It was clear that the psychic assault had only temporarily stunned it, and now it was back with a vengeance. Kalen knew he had mere moments before the building fully collapsed. He stumbled out into the open, scanning the battlefield. The Aeldari was gone, leaving behind a wake of chaos and confusion. The Imperium forces were still focusing on the giant, now more enraged than ever. They won't stop. The giant's thought voice was a desperate, angry shriek in his mind. Hulk just wants to go home. Kalen felt a pang of unexpected sympathy. He had witnessed the creature's immense destructive power, but he had also seen its confusion, its pain, its raw desire for peace. This wasn't a mindless beast. It was something more, and the Aeldari's presence only complicated matters, turning a simple hunt into a multi-layered conflict. Suddenly, a new sound ripped through the air. A deep, resonant thrum, unlike anything Kalen had heard before. The sky above, perpetually shrouded in ash and smoke, began to distort, shimmering with unnatural light. It wasn't another warp rift, not exactly. It was something else, a tear in reality, growing larger, pulsing with a vibrant emerald hue. Both the Imperium forces and the Green Giant paused, their attention drawn skyward. The fighting momentarily ceased, replaced by a stunned silence. Even the giant seemed to register the anomaly, its rage momentarily forgotten, replaced by a flicker of something akin to hope, or perhaps recognition. From the shimmering portal, something began to emerge. It was a ship, but not a ship of the Imperium. Its design was sleek, alien, almost organic, glowing with the same emerald energy as the rift itself. It was far smaller than a standard Imperial frigate, but far more elegant, a spearhead of unknown technology. The Imperium ships, still reeling from their encounter with the giant, immediately locked onto this new threat. Lieutenant Valerius. New contact! An unknown vessel emerging from a warp anomaly. It's glowing green, Kalen reported, his voice tinged with incredulity. Identify yourself, unknown vessel. You are entering Imperial space without authorization. Prepare to be engaged. Valerius's voice blared over the general Vox channels, a futile challenge against the impossible. The Green Giant let out a roar, but this time, it was different. Not a roar of rage, but a cry of something else. Recognition? Hope? It stood frozen, its eyes fixed on the emerging ship. Home. The telepathic whisper was barely audible, but Kalen heard it, a desperate plea. The unknown vessel fully materialized, hovering silently above the ruined planet. Its hull shimmered, and a ramp, bathed in emerald light, extended downwards. From within, figures began to emerge. They were tall, humanoid, clad in armor of a design utterly alien to the Imperium. Their skin was pale, almost grey, and their eyes glowed faintly. And many of them, like the giant, were green-skinned, though of a lighter hue and of more proportionate build. They were not Eldari. They were something else entirely. They carried strange energy-based weapons, their movements fluid and precise. They looked like warriors, but also like something ancient, something that commanded immense power. The lead figure, taller than the rest, stepped forward. Its armor was more ornate, glowing with intricate patterns. Its head was bare, revealing a striking, almost regal face, with high cheekbones and intense, intelligent eyes that burned with a faint, internal light. This was a leader. Its gaze swept over the ruined landscape, over the Imperial ships, and finally settled on the Green Giant. A slow smile, utterly devoid of warmth, spread across its face. So, you have found him, the figure said, its voice echoing telepathically in Kalen's mind, clear and resonant, utterly distinct from the giant's guttural roars or the Eldari's cold probe. Our lost one. And you have dared to provoke him. Kalen felt a surge of terror. This was not a rescue mission for the giant. This was something far more sinister. This new arrival was clearly connected to the giant, perhaps even its master, and it was already hostile. Who are you? Identify yourselves. Valerius's voice, now filled with trepidation, crackled through the Vox. The alien leader ignored him, its eyes still fixed on the giant. You have caused much trouble, my friend, much collateral damage. Its gaze flickered to the destroyed Imperial ships, then back to the giant, a hint of something cold and calculating in its eyes. But we have come for you now. Our mission is complete. The Green Giant, however, did not move towards the new arrivals with joy. Instead, it recoiled slightly, its massive form tensing. Its telepathic voice, now filled with a new, different kind of fear, whispered, "No, not them. Hulk doesn't want them. Hulk wants to be left alone." Kalen's mind reeled. This wasn't a reunion. This was something else. The giant feared these new aliens, and they, in turn, seemed to view the giant as a tool, a weapon, something to be retrieved. The alien leader raised a hand. Its followers, dozens of them, spread out, their weapons humming with emerald energy. They were preparing for a fight, but not with the Imperial forces. Their focus was entirely on the Green Giant. "Stand down, Xenos," Valerius roared, his voice filled with newfound fury. "This entity is a threat to the Imperium. Surrender it, or face the wrath of the Emperor." The alien leader merely chuckled, a sound that grated on Kalen's nerves. "The Emperor, a petty god of a petty race. You stand in the way of true power, Monkey. You stand in the way of the Green Scar." With that, the alien leader turned its gaze to the Imperial forces, its eyes glowing brighter. "You have played with forces you do not comprehend. Now, you will face the consequences." Suddenly, the new alien forces surged forward, not towards the giant, but towards the Imperial ground forces, their emerald energy weapons spitting deadly bolts. The Lehman Russ tanks, the APCs, the remaining PDF and guard troopers were caught completely by surprise. The new Xenos were incredibly fast, their movements almost a blur. Their energy weapons cut through armor and flesh with terrifying ease. The ground forces of the Imperium, already demoralized and scattered by the Green Giant's rampage, were now being assailed by a new, equally deadly foe. The battlefield became a maelstrom of green energy blasts, laser fire, and desperate screams. Kalen found himself caught in the middle. The Green Giant, for its part, watched the new battle unfold, its eyes wide with a mixture of fear and confusion. It seemed to want no part of this new fight, its initial rage towards the Imperium temporarily overshadowed by its apparent dread of these newcomers. Lieutenant Valerius.
The new Xenos are engaging our ground forces!
They're cutting them to pieces. They're incredibly advanced, Kalen yelled, his voice hoarse. I see them, Kalen. All remaining air assets, engage the new Xenos. Protect the ground forces! This is an assault on Imperial territory. Do not let them escape. Valerius's voice was a blend of fury and desperation. The remaining Imperial gunships, despite their earlier losses, bravely swung into action, their weapons spitting fire at the new Xenos. But these aliens were different. Their ship, hovering silently, began to emit energy pulses, deflecting incoming fire. And the ground troops, too, displayed uncanny defensive capabilities, deflecting or dodging most of the Imperial attacks. Kalen realized with a sickening lurch that the Imperium was facing not one, but two impossibly powerful alien threats, one of which they had inadvertently unleashed, and the other of which had come specifically to retrieve the first. And the Green Giant, the original anomaly, was now just a terrified observer caught between the two warring factions. His vox bead crackled again. Sergeant Kalen. Valerius's voice was low, strained. We have just received new orders from the Sword of Saul's Bridge directly. Priority 1. A full-scale invasion of this sector has just been authorized. A fleet, an entire battle group, is already en route. The Orcs, the Genestealers, even the anomaly itself, they are secondary. Our primary objective is to contain this new Xenos threat, the Green Scar, as they called themselves, and if necessary to destroy this planet rather than let it fall into their hands. Kalen's blood ran cold. Destroy Viridian 4 after all they had fought for? The orbital strike had only been localized. This was total obliteration. He looked at the battlefield. The Green Scar aliens were ruthlessly pushing back the Imperial forces. The Green Giant, meanwhile, still stood apart, watching with wide, frightened eyes. A primal beast caught in a complex web it didn't understand. The Eldari. Where had it gone? Kalen scanned the ruins again, a prickle of unease running down his spine. The Eldari were cunning. They never acted without reason. What was their game in all this? He got his answer a moment later. A faint shimmer, barely perceptible against the ash-choked sky, drew his eye. On another, even higher spire, the black-armored Eldari reappeared. It was still observing, still detached. But this time, it was joined by others. Several more Eldari, clad in similar dark armor, coalesced around it. They carried various esoteric weapons, long rifles that pulsed with psychic energy, shimmering blades, even devices that seemed to warp the very air around them. The lead Eldari, the one Kalen had first encountered, raised its hand again. This time, it wasn't a direct attack. Instead, it pointed towards the Green Scar vessel, hovering silently above the battlefield. A powerful psychic wave, far more focused and potent than anything Kalen had experienced before, erupted from the Eldari group. It struck the Green Scar vessel, not with physical force, but with an invisible hammer blow. The ship shuddered, its emerald glow flickering violently. Its energy deflection sputtered, and for a moment, it seemed vulnerable. Valerius!
The Eldari are back!
They're attacking the new Xenos ship, Kalen yelled, barely able to process the rapid shifts in alliances and threats. Eldari, attacking them? What in the warp is going on down there? For Valerius's voice was a shout of utter confusion and desperation. The Green Scar leader, fighting on the ground, looked up at its ship, then at the Eldari, its regal face twisting in a snarl of pure hatred. The cursed Eldar, always meddling. The battle had become a three-way free-for-all. The Imperium, reeling, tried to fight both the Green Scar and, cautiously, the Eldari. The Green Scar aliens were focused on the Imperium ground forces, But now their leader was redirecting some of its forces towards the Eldari on the spire, and the green giant, the Hulk, was still caught in the middle, a bewildered engine of destruction waiting for a trigger. Kalen looked at the Hulk. Its head was still down, its shoulders slumped. It looked utterly lost, utterly overwhelmed by the chaos erupting around it. It had been fighting for solitude, for peace, and now it was caught in a crossfire between three ancient warring factions. Then the ground beneath Kalen shuddered violently, not from a distant explosion, but from a tremor that ran deep, vibrating through the very bedrock. It was growing, building, a profound vibration that spoke of tectonic plates shifting, of the planet itself groaning under impossible stress. Valerius, what was that? Kalen screamed into the Vox. Sergeant! Our sensors are going wild. Planetary core stability is fluctuating. Gravity wells are unstable. Viridian 4, it's tearing itself apart. Valerius's voice was laced with terror. The warp rift, the energy signatures, the sheer amount of impossible forces unleashed on this world, it's causing catastrophic geological collapse. Get out of there, Kalen! Get out now! Kalen didn't need to be told twice. The entire landscape was shaking. Buildings began to sway, then crumble, not from battle damage, but from the very ground giving way. Fissures opened in the earth, belching superheated steam and molten rock. Viridian 4, battered by orcs, cleansed by orbital fire, infested by genestealers, and now a battleground for impossible Xenos, was dying. The Hulk roared, this time a cry of pure, unadulterated terror. It looked down at the cracking earth, then at the warring factions, then at the portal where the green Scar ship had emerged. It understood. This world was collapsing and it was still trapped. No! The telepathic scream was so powerful it almost shattered Kalen's mind. Hulk doesn't want to die here. Hulk just wants to go home. With a desperate, earth-shattering leap, the Hulk launched itself towards the green Scar vessel, ignoring the fighting below, ignoring the Imperium, ignoring the Eldari. It was a leap born of sheer, primal desperation, a creature trying to escape a dying world. The Green Scar leader, seeing this, screamed an order to its troops. Stop him! He cannot leave! Not yet! The Green Scar warriors immediately redirected their fire, unleashing a barrage of emerald energy at the airborne Hulk. The Eldari, on their spire, also reacted, their psychic weapons blazing, not at the Green Scar, but also at the Hulk, raining down pulses of dark energy. Kalen watched in horrified fascination as the giant, midair, was assaulted by both alien factions. Its powerful form was buffeted by energy, its green skin glowing from the impacts. It was a desperate escape attempt, and everyone seemed determined to stop it. But the Hulk was too powerful, too determined. It shrugged off the attacks, its momentum carrying it ever closer to the alien ship. The vessel, still hovering, was trying to open its ramp wider, trying to let its master aboard. Kalen knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that whatever plan the Green Scar had for the Hulk, it wasn't benign. And the Eldari's intervention, trying to stop it too, only confirmed that this creature, this Hulk, was a pawn in a game far larger and older than the Imperium itself. The planet groaned, a death rattle of seismic activity. Buildings shattered, entire sections of cities collapsed into newly formed chasms. The sky was now a swirling vortex of green and red, reflecting the dying world and the impossible energies unleashed. The Hulk slammed into the Green Scar ship, clinging to its hull, its massive fists already tearing at the metal. Its escape was desperate, violent, and messy. The Green Scar leader screamed orders to its pilot, trying to lift off, trying to shake the Hulk free. Kalen braced himself as another tremor rocked the ground. This was it. Viridian 4 was done. He had to get off this world, or at least transmit what he had seen. This was too important to die here. He scrambled for higher ground, finding a rock formation that jutted precariously from the crumbling earth. He raised his Voxcaster. Valerius! The planet is collapsing. I'm attempting to extract. The Hulk is trying to board the Green Scar vessel. Both alien factions are trying to stop it, but it's boarding their ship. Kalen, our fleet is still too far. The nearest elements will not reach you for hours. You need to find a secure shelter now. Valerius's voice was barely audible over the roaring wind and the sounds of a dying world. We are initiating emergency evacuation protocols for all remaining personnel. God Emperor, protect us all! Kalen knew it was futile. There was no shelter that would survive this. He watched, transfixed, as the Hulk finally tore a large enough hole in the green Scar vessel and disappeared inside, an explosion of green energy accompanying its violent entry. The alien ship, heavily damaged, instantly retracted its ramp and began to ascend, struggling against the planet's collapsing gravity, its engines flaring. The Eldari on the spire unleashed one last furious psychic blast, tearing a gaping hole in the green Scar vessel's struggling engines. The ship lurched, crippled, but continued its ascent, spiraling erratically towards the warp rift it had emerged from. The Eldari watched it go. Then, with a final contemptuous glance at the dying world, they too shimmered and vanished, leaving behind only the ghost of their presence. Kalen was left alone, watching the green Scar vessel, with the Hulk trapped inside, disappear into the fading emerald rift, just as the last remnants of Viridian 4 shuddered, groaned, and finally began to tear itself apart. The ground beneath him buckled, opening a chasm that reached for him. He braced, knowing this was the end. But the story, he realized, was far from over. It had merely transitioned from one impossible horror to another. He just hoped someone would survive to tell it. The chasm yawned for Kalen, a hungry maw in the dying world. The air screamed around him, a cacophony of groaning rock, splitting metal, and the distant, fading shriek of the green Scar vessel as it fought its way through the collapsing warp rift. There was no escape. This was the end of Sergeant Kalen, and of Viridian 4. But then, an impossible surge of energy, green and raw, erupted from the disappearing rift. It wasn't the ship, it was the Hulk. Or rather, a powerful telepathic scream that tore through Kalen's mind, a sound of pure, concentrated fury and defiance. It was a roar of escape, not capture. The ground beneath Kalen crumbled entirely. He didn't fall into darkness. Instead, a blinding flash of emerald light consumed him. It wasn't a portal, not a ship, but a momentary warping of reality itself, a desperate, uncontrolled burst of raw power from the Hulk. In that fleeting instant, Kalen felt himself ripped from the dying world, not through space, but through something far more terrifying and alien. He awoke with a gasp, choking on air that tasted of ozone and sterile metal. His body ached, every bone screaming, but he was alive. He lay sprawled on a cold metallic floor, beneath a ceiling that pulsed with soft, alien light. Around him, sounds were muted, distant, like whispers through water. This wasn't Viridian 4. It wasn't any Imperial vessel he knew. He pushed himself up, his combat knife still clutched instinctively in his hand. The room was sleek, devoid of corners, glowing with a faint green luminescence. Panels of intricate, unknown technology lined the walls. This was the green Scar ship. He had been somehow pulled aboard. A new telepathic voice, sharp and icy, sliced through his lingering disorientation. "You are an inconvenience, Monkey, a random variable in a precise equation." Kalen flinched, spinning around. The green Scar leader stood before him, its pale face twisted into a snarl of annoyance, not surprise. Its eyes, burning with faint internal light, were fixed on Kalen. "Where is it?" Kalen demanded, his voice hoarse but steady. The green one," the green Scar leader chuckled, a humorless sound. "Our asset? He is secured, though not without considerable trouble. He damaged the primary containment field. Our vessel is crippled, barely made it through the subwarp anomaly. And Viridian 4 is no more. A most inefficient retrieval." It took a step closer. "But now, you are a loose end." Suddenly, the ship shuddered violently. Alarms blared, red lights flashing across the pristine green walls. The green Scar leader snarled, its composure cracking. "What now?" Another powerful telepathic roar, distinctively the Hulk's, ripped through the ship. "They lied! They tricked Hulk!"
Hulk smash!
The ship groaned, a sound of tortured metal. A section of the wall to Kalen's right buckled inwards, then exploded. Through the gaping hole, the Hulk emerged, his eyes blazing with incandescent fury. He was battered, bleeding green blood, but his rage was incandescent. He had been contained, but had clearly broken free. Hulk doesn't want to be their weapon. Hulk wants to be free. The thought voice was a desperate, enraged scream. The green Scar leader lunged, its energy weapons sizzling into life. "Fool! You are nothing but a power source!" A conduit for the green Scar. The Hulk ignored the leader, his furious gaze falling on Kalen. Monkey helped Hulk. Monkey saw. Monkey's his friend? Kalen didn't hesitate. "They want to use you. They want to control you." The Hulk roared, a primal sound of absolute defiance. He turned, not on Kalen, but on the green Scar leader, who was already firing. The energy bolts hammered against the Hulk's chest, making him stagger but not stopping him. "You will not control Hulk," the giant bellowed, and with a single massive leap, he was on the leader, his fists a blur of green devastation. The leader, for all its alien power, was no match for the Hulk's unbridled fury. It was swatted aside like a toy, slammed into a control panel that sparked and exploded. The ship lurched again, more violently this time. The interior lights flickered and died, plunging Kalen and the Hulk into an eerie, pulsing red glow from emergency lighting. "What is happening?" Kalen yelled over the din of exploding consoles and structural groans. "Ship breaking!"
Hulk broke it!
The Hulk's telepathic voice, though still enraged, held a hint of primal satisfaction. Hulk just wanted to go home, not break more things. A new voice, cold and sharp, cut through the comms. Impressive for a brute. "You certainly live up to your legend." It was the Aeldari. They hadn't vanished completely. They were still here somehow. Kalen scanned the chaotic, damaged ship. He saw Green Scar warriors, alerted by the commotion, converging on their position, their weapons firing. He saw their leader slowly rising, its armor dented, its eyes blazing with renewed hatred. "Hulk, listen!" Kalen yelled, trying to project his voice above the ship's death throes. "The Aeldari are here too. They want something!" "They don't want you with the Green Scar, but they don't want you free either." The Hulk paused, a flicker of confusion in his rage-filled eyes. "More tricks? Everyone wants Hulk!" "Hulk just wants to be left alone." Suddenly, the Aeldari appeared, shimmering into existence directly in the damaged section of the hull, their dark forms outlined by the emergency lighting. There were 3 of them, led by the one Kalen had seen on Viridian 4. They carried psychic rifles that hummed ominously. "Indeed," the lead Aeldari's thought voice echoed, utterly calm amidst the chaos. "Such power cannot be allowed to simply wander. It is too dangerous, too volatile." It raised its psychic rifle, aiming not at the Hulk, but at a critical energy conduit running along the ceiling. "No, don't!" Kalen yelled, realizing their intent. They weren't trying to capture or kill the Hulk directly. They were trying to destabilize the ship further, hoping to either contain or destroy the Hulk within its demise. The Aeldari fired. A pulse of dark energy struck the conduit, and the ship screamed, metal tearing, sparks showering everywhere. Gravity flickered erratically, sending Kalen stumbling. The Green Scar leader shrieked, "Fools, you will doom us all!" It turned its weapon on the Aeldari. The battle erupted anew, a multi-front war within the confines of a dying ship. Green Scar warriors fired at the Hulk, their leader fired at the Aeldari, and the Aeldari fired at critical ship systems, and occasionally at the Hulk Kalen. Caught in the crossfire, knew he was going to die, but he had seen too much. This information had to survive. He had to try. He scrambled towards a glowing control panel, ignoring the fighting, ignoring the chaotic forces ripping through the ship. He needed to find a distress beacon, a comms array, anything that could transmit Mon Ki.
"Get out! Hulk will fight!"
"Hulk will be free." The Hulk's voice, now a desperate bellow, resonated through Kalen's mind. The Hulk, realizing the ship was truly dying, made a choice. He was no longer trying to escape. He was trying to break free. He launched himself at the weakest point of the ship, a section of the main engine conduit, ignoring the Green Scar fire and the Aeldari psychic blasts. He was tearing the ship apart, not to escape, but to prevent anyone from using him. The ship shuddered one last catastrophic time. The lights died completely. An immense force, a vacuum, began to pull at Kalen. The Hulk had succeeded. He had ripped open the hull, exposing them all to the void. Kalen felt himself being sucked out, tumbling into the inky blackness of space. He saw the Green Scar ship, now a mangled, exploding hulk of metal and energy, collapsing in on itself. He saw the Aeldari, their forms shimmering wildly, attempting to escape through their own warp jump technology. And he saw the Hulk, a green titan floating amidst the debris, roaring his defiance into the silent abyss. Free. The telepathic cry was one of raw, untamed triumph. "Hulk is free!" Then another emerald flash. This one, Kalen knew, was the Hulk. It was a violent, uncontrolled burst of energy, ripping a new, unstable rift in the fabric of reality. The Hulk, battered but unbroken, launched himself into it, disappearing into the unknown. He was gone. Where to, Kalen couldn't say, only that he was free for now. Kalen drifted, weightless, oxygen rapidly depleting, his vision blurring. He was a single, insignificant speck of humanity. lost in the vast, uncaring void. He had seen the impossible, reported the unimaginable. He had stood between empires and monsters, and somehow, by a miracle of sheer, impossible luck, he had survived this far. He closed his eyes, accepting his fate. Viridian 4 was gone. The Hulk was gone. The Green Scar was destroyed. The Aeldari had vanished. His mission was complete, in its own impossible way. Then, a faint rhythmic thrum vibrated through the silent void. It grew louder, closer, a pinpoint of light far in the distance, expanding rapidly. It was too fast for any standard Imperial vessel. It glowed with a familiar, sickly green. Kaelin's eyes snapped open, a fresh wave of dread washing over him. The Aeldari, they hadn't gone home. They were still here. A sleek, elegant starship, unmistakably Aeldari in design, materialized from the void. It was black, like their armor, with iridescent panels that shifted with the starlight. It was a smaller vessel, a scout or a raider, but potent. It didn't belong to the Dark Eldar, but to their cousins, the enigmatic, craft-world Aeldari. It approached Kaelin, its sleek form cutting through the void. A tractor beam, cold and blue, enveloped him. He felt himself being pulled towards the ship, not gently, but with a deliberate, calculating force. As he was drawn closer, a single, tall Aeldari figure appeared at the observation port, its helmeted face impassive. It was the same one who had led the assault. Its thought voice, cold and precise, touched Kaelin's mind one last time. You observed much, Mon-Ki. Too much. Such knowledge cannot be allowed to spread unchecked amongst your kind. The fate of the Green Scar is a delicate balance, and the power of the savage giant, it must remain a secret. Kaelin felt a cold, sharp prick as he was pulled into an airlock. He struggled, but his strength was gone. He had thought he was free, that his struggle was over, but he was just a new pawn in a new game. The last thing he saw before consciousness left him was the Aeldari's unblinking, assessing gaze. He was not dying. He was simply being taken. The galaxy, Kaelin realized, was a far more complex, dangerous, and utterly alien place than the Imperium of Man could ever comprehend. His story was not ending. It was merely taking an unexpected, terrifying turn into the silent, watchful custody of the Aeldari.